Hello everyone and welcome back to Nathran Deer's Guide to Everything, and welcome to another new kind of video on the channel, a look back essentially at a campaign that we just completed with my friends, Curse of Strahd, one of the most famous, infamous Dungeons & Dragons campaigns that there is. Now, some of my best performing content, and kind of the reason why I started this channel, is to get more people into the hobby of tabletop RPGs, D&D specifically, or has been up to now, essentially. So this is kind of more of a video aimed at GMs or players that want to be GMs, DMs, whatever you want to call them, that are thinking about running the Curse of Strahd. The things that I took away from that is actually only the second written module that I've ever completed all the way through. My first one was Icewind Dale. The second one was the Curse of Strahd. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the video, you find any of this useful. If you have tips for running a Curse of Strahd campaign that I don't cover here, obviously I can't cover everything. These are things that stood out to me and my players. Please leave a comment down below with what you think, and if you use any of these tips, please do let me know. Let's just jump straight into this so I don't ramble on anymore. This is 5 things I wish I knew before I ran the Curse of Strahd. Number 1, don't put too much emphasis on character backstories. You simply won't need them. Now, there can be as much depth as you'd like if you're running a campaign in like the Domains of Dread, which was covered in Van Richten's Guide to Everything. I forget exactly what that book is called. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, that one. If you're using that, you're using multiple Domains of Dread, feel free to really flesh out your character's backstory. But honestly, for your players, just advise them to come up with something super basic and simple. If they have a really fun idea to kind of trying to weave it into the world, it depends how much they know about the campaign. You can look to do that. But I encourage my players to make a deep enough backstory that it could be almost used for like a homebrew campaign with like family members and bonds that they had, particular items they may have brought forwards. And it was honestly just too much. I thought and these are all new players, by the way, that there were, or most of them were new to the game. This was their first full campaign. And I thought I'd give them the opportunity to fully flesh out a character and see that realized in the world. This was a mistake. The Curse of Strahd is a very focused experience, to be honest with you. So I would say don't do this. The simpler the story, the better. If there's a few nods here and there to other domains or what you were like in a previous life, maybe that can come back to haunt you in the campaign. Something like that. Something bad they did in their past, like a haunted one background, something like that. That could work. But don't go too deep into anything really. The story is so focused. The villain is obvious. You know what you're up against. You know the Strahd. You know you have these 3 things to collect by at some point during the campaign. And you can explore minor beats, but there isn't much room to explore other characters' backstories. There's already some pretty kind of obvious in the space here. What I found is that I was trying to like shoehorn in some of the characters' backstory elements into the campaign, and it just didn't fit the tone. And while it didn't distract too much from the experience, my players had a great time. I think just make life a bit easier for yourself and encourage simpler backstories and make sure the players know what they're coming into. You're going to be whisking them off to a different realm where they won't know anybody, basically. I feel like that's quite important to mention, which is something I didn't. That's a mistake. Number 2, let the characters encounter Strahd regularly. Don't overdo it, though, is what I must stress here. You want him to be lurking, have the potential to be in every scene. So I really leaned into his shape-shifting abilities, and I basically made him be kind of anywhere in the scene as an animal of some description. It would always be when the characters were traveling, for the most part, when they arrived at a location, they would perhaps see a raven perched on a window ledge that when you arrive, you see it kind of click its head to one side and then fly away from you. Now, as a GM, we know that could be someone in the Keepers of the Feather, a good aligned faction keeping an eye on the characters to make sure they're headed in the right direction, as it were. Or it could be Strahd. But if you plant those seeds early on that Strahd can be that, he could also be a wolf howling in the distance. He could just be a wolf in the scene, sat in the middle of the street. Or he could just be a guy in the scene, as it's recommended in the book, I believe. He has like an alternate ego called like Vlad something. I forget the exact name. I didn't use the human one. I lent into more of the animal shapes that he can take in the scene. At night, he can just be a bat. You see a flock of bats? Maybe that's right. A flock of bats fly overhead. The characters don't necessarily know that that is Strahd, but for you, that just gives you all the freedom in the world, because you just say he's watching everywhere. And even if it's not him, he has loads of spies too. All these evil wolves and zombies and skeletons and bats and ravens, crows, everything. This is his land. He literally says, I am immortal, I am the land. Barovia is his. He controls everything. He sees everything, and you should play it that way. What you want to do is make sure the characters encounter him regularly. One of the best moments of the campaign is when they arrived at the village of Vallaki. They found a church there, and they believed the church, everything to be absolutely fine. I think they came back from a mission or two, essentially returned back to base to Vallaki, and had a cleric in the party he wanted to visit. And actually, he encountered Strahd in the church because it wasn't consecrated grounds, because of essentially another kind of side quest where the bones of St. Andal, I want to say the bones of St. Andal had been stolen, essentially. And so they were no longer consecrated. So Strahd could just be there, essentially. And that made for a really tense encounter with our cleric, because he was like, literally, the devil is in my house, you know? That's a really, really fun encounter. And yeah, you want to play him as, or I did at least, intelligent and cocky, at least early on, when the characters literally can't touch him. That is when you want to drop him in very tense moments. I just had him just like haunt them during the night so they couldn't get a long rest, things like that. Just literally just stood outside their building, having a cigarette or whatever it might be, drinking a cup of wine, probably blood, and just conversing with the characters that were keeping watch, because he's so cocky he knows they can't do anything. That's a really, really fun dynamic. So yeah, use Strahd, make sure he's in the scenes, make sure the characters know who he is and how confident he is with his abilities. And back to the Ravens, the characters didn't know whether they were good or evil. For a lot of the campaign, I just said the Ravens are watching, and they had no idea that is both the Keepers of the Feather and Strahd. Really, really fun dynamic. Number 3, play smart and try to really embody Strahd himself, the devil, Strahd von Zarovich. I made a point of making notes about the party's tactics in and out of combat, like what spells are they using, what tactics are they employing, can I spot any weaknesses in what they're doing. And now I had a party of mostly new players, so there were a lot of things to pick from, and it was kind of like a learning experience for them, because I would take advantage of those weaknesses quite regularly, and then they knew for the next fight they had to be more and more prepared. There was an encounter with Strahd outside the walls of Vallaki that they had prepared for. They'd convinced some villagers to help defend a small assault that they had heard was coming in. And that fight was really enlightening for them, because it's the first time they'd encountered legendary resistances. And they didn't even know what that was. They had no idea what that mechanic even was. They're like, this changes the game completely. They would always pick damaging spells as opposed to buffs and debuffs on the enemies. And I think this really changed how they looked at the game. So as a new GM, this is good advice to just keep the party on their toes, trying to surprise them, study their tactics, make sure you take advantage of anything that they're lacking, for sure. Target characters that have poor wisdom saves with the charm. Literally as simple as that. I often also found it fun to kind of mock their usage of specific spells. We had one wizard who really favored using Dragon's Breath a lot. So when it came to encountering Strahd, he would go, I've pulled something from your book, and a gout of fire comes from his mouth or from one of his minions. And they were like, oh, he can do that too. And it was kind of this weird thing of they learned that actually, yes, he's super intelligent. He's a very adept spellcaster too. And they just found out more about him. And I think embodying Strahd is super, super important. Play him as a cruel, basically like a kid playing with his toys is how I embodied that character. And I've got some feedback because I wanted to make the video. I asked my characters how they think it went, and they loved it. They were like, we could tell you were enjoying it. And you know, it's one of those things, the DM wants the characters to succeed. They want the player characters to succeed. They want them to do well. They want them to be the heroes. But when I'm Strahd in a scene, I am Strahd in a scene, and he really wanted to punish these people and have a good time, essentially. And so it's really important you try and embody that. You never want it to feel unfair, but you do want to be cruel, for sure. And that came across. They had a really good time with it. They could tell I was enjoying myself. And multiple times after sessions, they'd say, like, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he did this. I can't believe he can do that. He has this ability of he's just MacGuffining his way out of everything. He can turn into mist. He can fly. He can misty step. He can all of these things. They're like, he's got so much in his bag. And because I have a good knowledge of the game, I was taking advantage of everything. It's a trial by fire for them. But yeah, so that's number 3. Play smart as Strahd and really try to embody how cocky he thinks he is. So next up, we have number 4. And this is a bit of a weird one. It's things that we encountered during the game, which I wish we had more time with. So I really wish I'd emphasized the presence of Baba Lysaga more and the Amber Temple. The Amber Temple is a key location in the game. This is where Strahd got his powers, where he gave his life over to a darker power to elevate himself, I guess. And there's some really fun characters there. If you've read the book, there is a lich that lives there. There's a few secrets to find, and the characters can really get a better understanding of kind of what happened to Strahd, what he's about, and some of the other characters in the world. I really liked that area of the game, but my characters were kind of thrust there from Strahd's castle. There was a teleportation circle there, and they were just teleported there. They had no idea where they were. It had barely come up in anything they found. So they were just trying to escape, essentially. They were a bit curious to a point, but it's such a fun location. I really wish I'd used it more. There isn't really a need for the players to go there. And so I think if I was running the campaign again, rather than randomly rolling the location of the 3 MacGuffins, which is the Icon of Ravenkind, the Sun Sword, and the Tome of Strahd, I would make sure one of them is at the Amber Temple, just so the players need to visit. And I would want the other one to be with Baba Lysaga, or at least you need to upplay how much involvement she had with Strahd's condition, his motives, I guess. And just for a reference, depending how far you are through the book, Baba Lysaga essentially raised Strahd to be this dark, awful person. It wasn't his mother. She was manipulating him from the very start. She was banished out into the swamp, and we go from there, essentially. But I never got to explore the more hag-like side of Baba Lysaga. Again, having new players made it quite challenging. I wish I'd told them a little bit more about it, of maybe what to expect, maybe dropped a few more hints in here and there of what interaction they might have. It actually just turned out almost immediately into a combat encounter. We have a very aggressive party member. You know who you are if you're watching this video. And she didn't take any shit, basically, and opened up pretty aggressively against Baba Lysaga, who, as I recall now, used a bit of something from her backstory to provoke her. And that was, for me, I wanted to test them to see what they might do. And when it turned into that, I was like, oh, damn, well, here we go. Baba Lysaga's a powerful NPC. And they actually, one of the, we had 2 character deaths in the campaign, and one of them was in that fight. So it's no joke. Baba Lysaga is an awesome character. Read up on that character for sure, and try and build a bit of like mythos, a bit of legend around that area, so that maybe the characters in your game take a little more time in the area, and maybe they have something to gain by conversing with Baba Lysaga as opposed to just straight up attacking her and it becoming a very fun but deadly encounter. All of my players mentioned that fight as one of the best that they had encountered. I prepared well for it. I had the hut move around. I had her in a flying skull, casting spells here and there. And I had 7 characters, so I had to upgrade her a little bit so she stood a chance. But it was an amazingly fun fight to run and to watch the characters' dynamics in that, and to lose a character as well. He's always makes for a memorable moment. So yeah, number 4, emphasize Baba Lysaga and the Amber Temple's involvement. I think those are really 2 really cool locations and characters. And finally, number 5, to kind of wrap this up. I didn't want to go into too many. There's loads of things I could have done, but we're going to stick to 5. The castle. I did a lot of preparation. I read the book through once, and before every session, I would kind of, towards the end of the game anyway, I would revise myself, review the castle area of the game whenever I thought they might be headed in that direction. I would kind of give that section, and that is a big chunk of the book, I would give that a read, Castle Ravenloft. It's tough to remember everything, but let me tell you now that the more you know that section, the easier it will be to run, and the more fun it will be to run. By the end of my game, my characters were not in a rush of sorts, but I think they had decided themselves that when they go to the castle, this is the last time they will do this, and they're committing essentially to trying to defeat him when they got to the castle. So they did the dinner. It didn't go well. They returned later with a bit of backup from the village of Vallaki, but I didn't know the castle as well as I thought I should have, to be honest with you, and the characters in it. I really wish I'd put more emphasis around Strahd's wives. I think those tormenting the characters throughout the course of campaign in their own unique ways could have been really cool too. So in hindsight, learn those wives, maybe give them a bit more of a deeper backstory. In the end, I think I went for like the smart one, the more nature druidic focused one, and the more hellish fiendish one, like the warlock as such, between those three vampire spawn. But the characters they encountered them twice, didn't really know much about them. They didn't really talk. Strahd was commanding the scenes, but I'd love to have involved them a little bit more. I knew the dungeon levels of the castle, but not the upper levels too much, because the characters just didn't explore there, and I didn't get hints from them that they wanted to explore the upper levels of the castle. So maybe I could have done a better job in letting them know that like this castle is a huge source of knowledge. You could find lost artifacts in there. While Strahd probably knows everything that's in there, there are some things that he wouldn't want to get out. So if you have a chance, explore that. Make sure that you're exhausting all the resources that are available to be got from the castle. You know, draw the characters in, make them think about it, make them want to explore it, and that puts it on you to learn it and learn it well. That's the thing I wish I'd done a little bit better, so I wouldn't have had to refer to the document so much and refer to the book when just changing rooms. If you know where don't know what happened then. If you know where all the staircases lead, all of them, you're going to be doing a better job than I did. There's so many staircases, so many things that can happen. Just kind of memorize where all the traps are, things like that. I really recommend you learn the castle inside and out. And when I was looking for advice, it did say that. Read the castle once, twice, 3 times. I tried and I didn't quite take it all in, basically preparing for each session. But I really, really recommend it. If you really want to run a really successful game in the castle and like Strahd, make Strahd be super deadly in there in a final encounter, you need to know it. And so I would recommend doing that. All right. I think that kind of wraps up this video. Another kind of new format. I hope this is helpful to budding GMs out there or players becoming GMs, or if you're just thinking about running the Curse of Strahd, a little bit of advice from someone that's recently ran it, basically, in the how 5e is today. Yep, so very quick recap. 1, don't put too much emphasis on character backstories. Probably won't need them. 2, let the characters encounter Strahd regularly. Make him be a menace. And on that note, number 3, play him smart. Really embody him. Be cruel. And I can't stress it enough. You want the characters to hate this guy, but you also want them to feel like oppressed, especially in the early part of the campaign. You want them to know that he is all powerful. And it's quite, I would say, easy to do. I had loads of fun doing it. So really try and get into character with that one, if you do with any other character. Number 4, emphasize Babilai Saga and the Amber Temple. I thought I really enjoyed those areas, and I don't think my players got to experience as much of it as I would have liked. So read up on that and see what you think. And 5, read the castle section twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, as many times as it takes for you to know it very well. And more importantly, I think the NPCs in the castle too. I didn't have a great grasp on every NPC that was there. I think it's super important to do that, especially Strahd's wives. I think they could play a much more pivotal role in the campaign than what is actually written. So yeah, give that a go. Right. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe with what you thought. If you have any tips for other Strahd runners, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this. If you like this format, I'm sure I'll get back to the Legend Forge soon. I just haven't decided what to do next. I know you guys love those videos. But for now, that is all. This has been Nathrandir's Guide to Everything, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.